I want to begin this video with an impossible question, which is, what is it that makes a game perfect? Not just good, not just great, but truly a timeless classic that we're going to be discussing for months or even years in the future. Because I honestly think that God of War Ragnarok fits those qualifications. This is a game that has completely incredible action, impossible boss fights, some really epic scenes, and on top of it, some very deep, heartfelt writing. I love this game. I mean, straight up, from start to finish, multiple playthroughs, this game is something that I feel like is going to stand the test of time. But I want to explain how, and I want to explain why. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and this is my brutally honest review of God of War Ragnarok. Now, if you could please give this video a big ol' like and subscribe if you haven't already. If this video hits 6,000 likes, I am going to be giving away a copy of the Super Ultimate Collector's Edition. I mean, I'm probably going to give it away no matter what. I've already paid for it, so I want you guys to have it, but please like the video. Now, this is going to be a completely spoiler-free review. All the gameplay, all the action, all the chaotic takedowns you're going to see in this are from roughly the first 10 hours. I'm going to tease some tiny side quests and some early bosses and stuff, but you're going to be able to play this game completely blind, even after having watched me rant about how great it is. But we need to begin by discussing the world of Ragnarok. It has now been roughly 3 years since the original God of War 2018 has taken place, and in that time, these characters have not just been sitting around. You can see that the world has definitely advanced. Kratos and Atreus are still dealing with the consequences of what they did in that game. Currently, there is a huge blizzard called Fimbulwinter that's been raging for the entirety of this 3 years. Essentially, they've been stuck in the deepest, coldest winter now for literally just so much time. And because of that, they've had to grow stronger. They've had to grow more fierce. They've had to become more savage. And you can feel this very deep sense of growth inside the game. Not just from the fact that they're better fighters, but you can feel it in Atreus specifically. While it has been 3 years inside the game itself, it's also been 3 years in real life. Atreus, the actor and stuff, has obviously grown up. It was a little kid who played the character in the first game, and now, because he's aged up, he sounds more deep. He sounds more ready for combat. He's more eager to shoot. And not only do you hear this in his voice and honestly his acting skills, but you can tell the fact that there is this beautiful respect throughout all of Ragnarok. Perhaps the part of this that blew me away the most, beyond the crazy takedowns and the really good animations and just tiny little details to weapon upgrades and stuff like that, I'm so impressed by the fact that this truly feels like a father and son story. It feels like Kratos is the dad of Atreus. When he tells him lessons, when he corrects his mistakes, when he gets mad about Atreus saying a curse word because they were falling off a cliff, it feels like Christopher Judge, the actor, really speaking to his son. There's this shocking amount of depth to the characters that we're experiencing, but more than that, it does feel genuine. Their arguments, their fights, their triumphs, their big, hard consequences that they're facing the actions of. All of it feels so incredibly earned and so incredibly realistic. Now, before I go any deeper on the idea of the writing and the storytelling and stuff like that, I do want to take a moment to discuss the very incredible gameplay that we have in Ragnarok, because this time around, things are definitely so much more savage, so much more brutal. At times, in God of War 2018, it felt like Kratos was trying to hold back. Like, you could tell that he was willing to fight, he was willing to rip apart some werewolves and stuff like that, but he always felt like he was trying to restrain himself rather than unleashing his true essence of God of War. Whereas in Ragnarok, Kratos is back. When you see him swinging the blades of chaos or trying to air juggle somebody by launching them up in the air and then grapple hooking them back and ripping them to bits. Holy heck, is it so freaking epic. But additionally, this game feels much harder than God of War 2018, but I do mean this as a compliment. There is a ton of bosses in this game. Frequency-wise, pretty much every 30 minutes or so, you're going to run into another, either major boss or a mini-boss. All of them are so shockingly cool, whether it is an electrically charged alligator or something like a weird, creepy centaur that tries to rip you down while climbing an ice wall, or even Thor himself. Now, this is towards the beginning of the game, so I'm not gonna this isn't any major spoiler, but holy heck is the Thor fight so 10 out of 10 insanely good. I love this game from start to finish, but where I feel like it manages to ramp itself up the most is in a lot of these fights. It's nice to see that Kratos is finally unleashing himself. The major thing they've added to the combat this time around is elemental aspects. If you're using the axe, it can now be charged with frost. By holding triangle before you do an attack, you essentially channel a bunch of energy into it, which makes your next strike very, very frosty. Now, this is interesting because it has a stun effect, but what I enjoyed even more than that is the Blades of Chaos. By tapping triangle repeatedly, you channel a bunch of fire into it so you can burn people. These status effects can really change the nature of fights, helping you stagger, helping you get away, or sometimes just helping you crowd control in some of the bigger, sloppier fights. By far the most difficult aspect of a lot of these major encounters is the fact that enemies feel like the AI is drastically improved. This time around, they're willing to surround you, they're willing to back attack. A lot of times when you're fighting just 2 or 3 guys up close, there's a couple dudes that are off in the distance sniping you with acid or magic. I kind of love the overwhelming force of this, though. Kratos and Atreus feel almost terrified during even the smallest of encounters because not only is it very, very brutal, it's difficult. I like the fact that I died so much. In every single boss, every major boss, I usually died 2 or 3 times before I even started to figure out the proper way to dodge, the proper way to survive, the proper way to use my own special abilities. I honestly like that. It's so cool that this game feels not just rewarding, but it feels punishing as well. It feels like you have to be focused, you have to be paying attention, you have to be willing to parry that next strike or do the next proper dodge, and honestly use your special abilities as much as possible. But that brings me to the upgrades. So the gear system in God of War 2018 could be a little bit convoluted at times. Because you had so many different slots, because you had different aspects to it, it could be a little bit weird because you had to sort of micromanage your character sheet. Here they've definitely simplified it down to the core aspects of what's most important. Essentially, every weapon now just has a couple major parts. This makes it so your axe can have its different parts swapped out, so you can make the handle better, or upgrade just the hilt, or make it so the counterweight is a little bit better off. And this improves the damage of it, but it also lets you sort of customize your play style, whether you want to have more defense or more offense. And yes, I actually had the axe built because that's how much I love God of War 2018, and now I love Ragnarok even more. This was a change that I don't know if it was needed, but it's definitely appreciated because I like the fact that I spent so little time in menus. A lot of times, once I got enough experience points to go to the skill trees and unlock a new talent, a lot of times I could very quickly figure out what fits my tastes, what fits my playstyle, whether it is wanting to upgrade the Blades of Chaos more or my Spartan Rage. I like the fact that this is one of those games where you spend very little time in the menus if you don't want to. You can just go there, you can press auto equip a lot of times, you go back to the blacksmith and use the couple raw assets you've used to improve your character, and then you move on to the next major event. I like that. I think it keeps the game very, very poppin', very, very fresh. But I do want to talk about the side quests in a completely spoiler-free fashion. The main story of Ragnarok is fantastic. I mean, it's seriously one of the best stories I've seen in a video game in years and years and years. It's beautiful, it's deep, it's transparent, it's exhausted at times, just seeing these people stuck in these eternal battles of good and evil and shades of gray. But I also kind of enjoy the fact that when it comes to side quests, while they are optional, I think they add a lot of very wonderful added lore. A lot of times you can see and talk to the other characters about their past mistakes, about the things they've screwed up or done correctly in the past, and then help them get some sort of resolution, helping them basically fix a lot of the problems with Midgard and these 9 realms. And I really, really love that. Getting a chance to explore these areas and then sometimes even backtrack to re-explore them and do these additional events. While I don't think they're super required because you can pretty much beat this game with just doing the main stuff, you'll always get enough upgrade materials and experience points. I enjoyed this not for the benefits to combat. I enjoyed these additional side bits just because, honestly, I cared about these characters. With that being said, there are two different styles of side quest of sorts, which is there are the ones where you're trying to help somebody out with typically trying to clean up some mess they've made, but there's also these side events which are basically super bosses. Now, these guys are tough. They are very, 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 very tough. I played through this entire game on normal difficulty. These side guys, you're pretty much never ready for it, but I think that's also kind of the point. These encounters are typically very set up. You know what you're getting into. They properly warn you before you walk into that deadly arena. But then once you're in there, it is very, very tough to fight some of these side super bosses. And the rewards are very generous. Lots of XP, lots and lots of upgrade materials, sometimes some super heavily improved upgrade materials. I tried to beat every single side boss I found, like all these optional mega bosses. I beat every one I discovered, and I have to say that, man, are they incredibly fun, but I also think they add that extra bit of lived-in sense to this world. The fact that there are just random, horrible creatures wandering about makes it feel so much more real, makes it feel so much more impactful, because it does feel like this environment exists even when you're not looking at it. That's how it feels, and I really, really, really enjoyed that. The entirety of this world has such a wonderful logic to it. There's such an even flow to these events, to this universe, and I think that's really reflected nicely in the dungeon design. I know they probably don't want me to refer to these levels and environments as a dungeon, but that is how they feel, and I think they're so expertly built. Now, a lot of times when it comes to the best games, I think the highest compliment you can say is that if there is a sign, if there's a branching path in a video game, and there's a sign that says go right to face the boss, if you go left, and if you enjoy going left, if you enjoy going down the wrong path to find those hidden upgrades, those extra puzzles, that extra stuff, I think that's the highest compliment you can say. In every single dungeon of God of War Ragnarok, I did everything. I got every optional puzzle, every side quest, every single thing I could possibly do in each of the dungeons. I did it. Not because I needed to, I genuinely loved it. I loved every single inch. I loved unlocking every shortcut. I loved every single time I'd bounce my axe off of a windowsill to try and find an extra side path. I think this game has some of the most gorgeous, lived-in, existing dungeons I've ever seen. Seriously, when you play this game, because all of you should absolutely play this game, get lost. Turn off the hints. There is like a weird thing where the characters will tell you what to do. You can totally turn that off. I think this game is better in those times where you're stuck staring at a puzzle trying to figure out what the heck this is. There are a lot of multi-step puzzles where you're having to try and like push a cart and then freeze some water and then try and explode something. A big new element to this is the environmental weapons. I've talked about the fact that your axe is frost and your blades of chaos are fire. You use those in puzzles, whether it is burning brush to clear paths or trying to freeze stuff and just make ice paths. I think it's cool that there is this extra form and function to your weapons outside of combat. It does feel like, in a way, Kratos is looking to stop. Kratos does want to solve these problems. And all of it is so extremely fun. More than anything else, this game is so fun. I feel like so many games that try and tell deep, heartfelt, serious stories sometimes forget the fact that it's still supposed to be enjoyable. The story in this game, though, truly is what shines brightest. There are heartfelt moments of extremely good jokes, watching the conversations between these characters, whether it is while we're exploring or when you're inside of some big house having a big important meeting. Everything is so well well acted. Everybody is seriously just so top-notch. These are the masters of their skill. Each line of dialogue is so beautifully written, and every joke lands so expertly well. I was literally cracking up at some times, which I'm kind of shocked to say because I don't think that God of War Ragnarok, I didn't expect it to be so funny, but every joke feels earned. But what really hit me most is that you truly care about these characters. Even side characters really managed to sink their claws into you. I had a moment, which I'm not going to show you because it's a giant spoiler, where me and a character were walking out of a dungeon. We were walking side by side, and it's just not a cutscene. You're just casually walking along, and this character started to talk about their personal struggles, an inner demon they were dealing with. Their acting was so realistic. Their dialogue was so heartfelt, so genuine. I stopped in the game and turned towards the person. They would have kept doing the dialogue. They would have kept speaking even if I kept walking, I bet. But the moment was so real that instinctually I turned towards them to, out of respect, listen to what they said. I reacted the way I would to a real person, even though this is just pixels. It's just audio logs, but it feels real because their problems are so relatable. I love the story of this game. I love it the first time you play through it. It's even better the second time you play through it. This story tells the tale of exhaustion, of aging, of beautiful love beyond all else. I don't think there's going to be a story like this for years. This may be one of the best video game stories of all time, and I'm just so blown away that they managed to pull it off. I will say the only tiny critique I have about this game is that you really do have to pay full freaking attention. When I was playing this game, I was taking detailed notes. That's what I'm reading here off my other monitor here. And I had to write down a lot of these names because there is just tons and tons and tons of people. Characters and locations. You're having to worry about Odin and Thor, Tyr and Svaldavar, which is like the land of the dwarves, the freaking dark elf king, like Freya and her brother Freyr. Like, there is a lot of different names. There's a lot of different characters. Now, I don't mean that as like a complaint. I mean that this is one of those games where you have to sit here and you have to pay attention. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be watching Netflix on your second screen. You have to pay full attention. And I do feel like you can't really take breaks. This is one of those games where like you got to go to work, obviously. At some point, you got to sleep and poop. But this is one of those games where I feel like you have to be paying attention. When you're holding this controller, you better be full-blown focusing on this, or you're not going to really understand what's going on, other than some very epic, flashy fights. This game is perfect. This game is exactly what the heck I wanted. Graphically, I mean, everything about this, from the art, to the writing, to the storytelling, to the combats, this is super, super top-notch. And it might be my game of the year. But we've heard a ton of good and a tiny bit of bad, but let's go to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving God of War Ragnarok, played on a PlayStation 5, a 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But please do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Next week, I'm going to be doing a big spoiler video, definitely around launch day, because there is so much extra story stuff that we have to talk about that I wasn't able to talk about in this. But I love you guys. Have a good one, and Ragnarok is coming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.